Okay, guys, so second part of book 4, we're going to cover that, try to get through this quickly. So the first part of book 4, of course, we got a little bit of backstory on the Iliad, specifically with regard to Helen and Agamemnon and Menelaus and the Trojan horse and Odysseus and so on and so forth. And so tonight's lecture is going to cover the second part of the book, in which Telemachus, of course, is visiting Menelaus. This is his next stop along the way in his search for news about his father. Okay, so we'll get to this guy in a second. This is Proteus. But what happens is Menelaus picks up the story about page 135, about line 391, and he says after Troy that they were lost in a storm, of course, and they ended up shipwrecked on an island where they didn't really have any good wind or anything, and the men become kind of despondent, and they're stranded there. And it's then that Menelaus runs into a basically a goddess, Aodathia, and this is a daughter of Proteus, and this is a picture of that good-looking guy right here. He's a sea god. Whoops, I'm not ready for that yet. So we still use this word today, and it comes from the Odyssey and this whole idea of Proteus. It's called protean. It's something that is able to shapeshift. Can be a good thing, or can be sometimes is referred to in a pejorative way if you're talking about a person that's kind of moody or something like that, unstable, shifting. But also someone that has many talents, and we say that they are protean, or it was a protean-like experience. Okay, so that's kind of a little bit of culture about Proteus. So, long story short, Menelaus wants to know if she can tell them why the gods have cursed them to be stranded for so long, and he suspects it's because when they left Troy they didn't sacrifice. Well, it's confirmed. She says, "Well, talk to my dad, Proteus, but you have to do it in a interesting way." And so here's where we get just a little bit of confirmation about why these guys are dressed the way they are. So she tells the story that her dad, every night when he comes out of the ocean, he comes to take care of the seals, much in the same way that a shepherd would take care of his sheep, and then he counts his flock of seals, so to speak. So her advice is put on these seal skins that I have, which are pretty smelly. In fact, Menelaus will even say they were so horrible that she had to put a little ambrosia underneath our noses so we could stomach it. But they dress not like wolves in sheep's clothing, but like Greeks in seal skins. And they lay down with the seals, and she says every night when my dad comes, he counts his seals, and you need to grab him and hold him down. He has the inability to lie. He can only tell the truth, but you have to catch him. And it's tough because he's going to shapeshift. Alright, so this is where we get this notion of Proteus from. And so, of course, the plan works, and they, disguised as seals, grab Proteus, and he begins to shapeshift into a number of things: a serpent, a panther, a boar, some treetops, a torrent of water. But in the end, the men hold out, and he has to tell them whatever they want to know. It's almost like a genie out of the bottle. So, of course, the first thing Menelaus wants to know is, why are we stranded? And it's confirmed that they have to go sacrifice. I found this picture online, still sacrificing bulls in Greece today. This is from an ancient ceremony, but you can see they would have dressed the bull up, and they would have offered this to the gods as animal sacrifice, cut the bull's neck, and burnt some of the meat as an offering to the gods along with wine. So this is part of their religion for the Greeks, like we saw in the video, myth more than story. So Proteus explains that Menelaus will have to sail back toward the Nile and make this sacrifice before he'll be allowed to go home. But Menelaus is no dummy, and he realizes he has a genie out of the bottle, and so he wants to know, what are some other things that you can tell us? And so he wants to know what happened to his other comrades at Troy. This is, of course, going to be great for Telemachus, because he knows that he'll be hearing pretty soon about what Menelaus found from Proteus. So Proteus proceeds to go through the cast of characters from the Odyssey. So we have this is Agamemnon here, and this is Menelaus. This pretty boy is Ajax, and this is Paris. Here in the middle is Odysseus with the funny looking hat on. We have Diomedes, and then this is Nestor, I believe. So Proteus begins to go down the list and explain all of the people that Menelaus knew that died. One of those is actually Ajax. There are two Ajaxes in the Iliad actually, but one dies at sea. He actually tells the gods that no god can kill me, and of course they do. We also get Aegistheus's story again. I'm sorry, Agamemnon's story being killed by Aegistheus. And that's kind of a bummer to Menelaus because not only is he a comrade, but he's his actual brother. And so Menelaus, this is how Menelaus learns about his own brother's death. The bright shining spot here, though, is that Proteus explains that I did see Odysseus, though. He's shipwrecked on this island with Calypso. He has no way to get home, and she won't let him leave. So here's kind of a famous image of Calypso's island, and you can see brooding Odysseus looking off. And there's their little love cave right there. But you can see that this is what the scenario is. And Proteus explains this to Menelaus. Of course, we can only imagine how happy this would make Telemachus. One of the things I want you to pay attention to is how Telemachus is growing in stature here. He's very tactful at the end of Menelaus' story when Menelaus, so taken by Telemachus, offers all these lavish gifts, including horses, and Telemachus explains that Ithaca is no place for horses. It's the greatest place in the world, but it's rocky and full of cliffs. We're not a horse people. So Telemachus is very tactful in his refusal of these gifts, and he starts to really sound like Odysseus. This is not lost upon Menelaus. He realizes, he says, "Good blood runs in you, dear boy." So Telemachus is starting to grow in stature through this carefully orchestrated plan set up by Athena. All right, so here's what I really want you guys to pay attention to in this chapter, which will throw you off, undoubtedly. On page 144, about line 700 or so, we have a switch. We have a point of view shift back to Ithaca. And essentially what we have is the suitors full of swagger. And yeah, it's a great word, and you guys use it all the time, but it's mostly, you'll hear it a lot in the Odyssey. So the suitors are full of swagger, and they actually learn that Telemachus took off. And they're a little freaked out by this. They didn't really think that he would actually do it. So they decide to come up with a plan to murder him. Of course, they, being stupid, they say it too loudly, and some of the servants overhear it and inform Penelope. It's interesting that Penelope has this very childlike view of Telemachus. She calls him her dear boy and my young boy. He's 18 years old, so mothers haven't changed very much either. You're always going to be their little boy. But this is the way Penelope thinks of Telemachus, and she realizes that she's about to lose another man. She decides to go seek help from Laertes, who is very old. He's Odysseus' father, and he's so disgusted with what's happening back at the palace that he's kind of adopted this life of living out in the country like a farmer and just staying away from the main part of Ithaca where all the suitors are. We see an appearance by Euryclea here, where she admits that she knew Telemachus' plan, but he swore her to secrecy. And in the end, what we get is, here's a picture of the suitors, a very famous piece of art with Penelope weaving Laertes' shroud and all the suitors vying for her hand. But Penelope prays to Athena. She kind of lets out this scream, and Athena hears it. So do the suitors. They interpret this somehow that she's getting ready to marry one of them. But Athena comes down and decides to visit Penelope in a dream, and she does it in the nicest way possible. She comes as Penelope's own sister and tells Penelope not to worry, that everything's going to be okay. Penelope's no dummy, and she realizes this is probably a god, and she wants to know if the dream can tell her anything about Odysseus. And of course, Penelope says, no can do. So book 5 is coming up next, and we'll get into actually meeting Odysseus for the first time.